Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're having a work session on the body-worn camera and any updates related to that. And so I'd like to turn it over to our friends at RPD. I'll start with Chief Smith, if you want to do some introductions here, and then we can dive right in.
Sure. With me today, I have Deputy Chief of Administration Deb Dwyer, and then from our Office of Business Intelligence in the body-worn camera unit, I have me and Saladin, and then the Director, Nick Petiti.
All right, thank you. So who is leading the discussion today?
So I have a brief presentation that can kind of walk us through the history of the body-worn camera program, where we currently are with the project and where we're proposing to go moving forward. I just want to take a minute to introduce Mike Weber from the Project Management Office. He's been acting as our project manager for this project over the course of the last 2 years.
Hi, all. It's nice to meet those of you I haven't spoken to before. Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to jump right in and see if I can share my screen. Should be popping up in a second. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, perfect. So like I mentioned a second ago, we're going to start talking about the program history, because I know a lot of people on council right now weren't part of the process back in 2016 when we first implemented body-worn cameras. I know it's a hot topic and it comes up a lot. We want to talk about the selection process that we've gone through over the course of the last 2 years to look for a potential new vendor. I want to give you an overview of the new program as it's currently designed, talk a little bit about the benefits of the potential new program, and then the next steps on where we need to go to finalize this. And feel free to interrupt and jump in at any point. This isn't too long, but you guys all know me. I can get a little long-winded. So a couple things that we probably want to talk about real quick. There's a lot of jargon that gets thrown around in police vernacular. Lots of abbreviations. This is no different, but the two that you will hear most frequently in this presentation are BWC, which stands for the body-worn camera. And when I talk about BWC, I'm talking about the physical camera that the officers wear on their uniform. And then we're going to talk a lot about digital evidence management systems today, which is commonly referred to as DEMS. That's the back-end software that houses, stores, secures, analyzes, and shares all of the digital evidence that's collected by the body-worn cameras. It also does the same functionality for potentially blue light cameras, interview rooms, and private security cameras. So for the better part of this discussion, two key things to remember: body-worn camera is really talking about hardware. DEMS is really talking about the software. So our program history, the body-worn camera unit, essentially came into existence in 2016, but that came with a lot of planning and preparation from roughly June 2015 to July 2016, where we established a project charter. We conducted a number of vendor demonstrations. We secured funding later on in 2016 through a DOJ grant, a Department of Justice grant, which was matched with city funds to get the initial program launched in July of 2016. Obviously, during the implementation phase, that consisted of a lot of user training, the actual deployment of our body-worn cameras, which went in 3 phases. We didn't just drop 500 in all at once. We cycled through 3 different versions to make sure every officer had a chance to get trained. All users were aware and following the policies and procedures that were drafted, and for us to really focus on process mapping, routing of the data. In August of 2017 through June of 2018, we upgraded to the newest version of the camera. That is the current camera that we have right now, which was upgraded in 2018. So we're 3 years out from any kind of new camera. And Mian is kindly showing it on his screen right now. So just to kind of backtrack a little bit on where we were. These were the major project decisions that we made at the time. And remember, this is back in 2016. They really surround kind of 5 main topical areas. Really, the focus was on getting body-worn cameras in Rochester. The mayor at the time was a big proponent of body-worn cameras, and the program that we implemented was really focused on getting our feet wet with understanding how to use body-worn cameras, what the technology does, how it's used, how it will be used in practice. And the focus was really on the buy-in from the officers to make sure they're following policies and procedures, to make sure they're turning the camera on when they're supposed to understand whether or not the camera is durable enough to survive a typical workday. We were very focused on a single source, single point of contact for a vendor. Since this was the first time that we were getting involved with body-worn cameras, we didn't want to have multiple solutions pushed together. We wanted to have a single point of contact. And actually, that was actually part of the requirement from the DOJ grant. From a storage capacity, it was decided at the time with discussions with our city IT personnel and their philosophy at the time, that we would do on-premises storage, which meant we would be responsible, the city of Rochester would be responsible for maintaining on-premises all of the digital evidence that's collected from the cameras. From an administration standpoint, we were really focusing on the classification and the retention of the data. So how the officers tag and how we store the data. And that was about the extent of systems administration focus that we really concentrated on in the beginning of the first phase. The sale, as I mentioned before, the grant requirement in part necessitated us owning the actual equipment. So because of the budgeting process and how we take the money in, we had to physically buy all of the equipment that we utilized. So right now, our program, what our current status and kind of limitations of the current program are right now is we have over 500 cameras in circulation right now. A vast majority of our stock is roughly 6 years old. That last phase that I mentioned that came in 2018, which is bordering 4 years old now, that was about a third of our stock. Over 90% of all of our stock that we currently own is out of warranty, which means if we break it, we have to buy a new one. And in 2021, a monthly average of 16 cameras were exchanged for a number of different reasons. We have firmware issues, we have potential LCD screen related issues, we have battery problems with some of these cameras, in addition to the normal wear and tear. We currently have about 490 terabytes of storage on premises, and our current digital evidence management system, which some of you may know as C3 Sentinel, is at the end of product life. Actually, it ended its product life in 2020, which means the vendor's no longer providing us software upgrades or any support. So if something goes wrong or breaks with our digital evidence management system, we are paying out of pocket for any kind of potential support. And then in that same time, the demand on utilization of body-worn camera footage and digital evidence in particular has increased significantly. Our DEMS functionality, so this C3 Sentinel application, is very limited for our current organizational needs. It doesn't really have an advanced system for security, for auditing, for compatibility, which makes it very non-efficient for processing a lot of the workload that we currently have. So all in all, in the 6 years or so that we've had body-worn camera program up and running, we've learned a lot around body-worn camera failure points. So we're a lot more knowledgeable about what it's like to have a body-worn camera, what the wear and tear on the body-worn camera looks like in a normal day. We have a really good understanding now of the data workflow needs that come with the collection of digital evidence and the management of it. We understand that we really need a flexible platform to be able to scale this program. We're pretty much limited to what we currently have right now with our system. We don't have the ability to integrate with other records management systems or computer-aided dispatch systems, or actually even our blue light camera system. And then we have a really good understanding now of what the systems administration workload looks like. And, you know, if anybody really wants to know, I'm sure Mia can delve into that a lot further. So where we currently are right now, we're talking about what's the business challenge that we're facing, right? And our real objective citywide is improving the capabilities and the efficiency for us to store, retrieve, and maintain our video. And in particular, our body-worn camera video. So the goal of this project that we're going to talk about in a little bit was really focused around finding the solution that best fits our current needs, and will allow us to invest in new body-worn camera hardware and have a digital evidence management system that meets our technical needs. So we began this project, actually, I know the slide says October 2020, but we began this project probably in July of 2020 when we were looking at potentially upgrading our C3 Sentinel program because it was at end of life. The vendor that we currently have does offer a new solution, but it didn't meet our technical needs. So we quickly pivoted, got the project management office involved, and started our request for qualifications. So we partnered with Marketplace City, essentially to go out and gather intelligence around what body-worn camera and digital evidence management solutions are currently out there, what's being utilized by other places. We spent a lot of time figuring out what our qualifications are, or qualifications would be, what we need from a technical capacity, what we want from a usability capacity. And then we put together a request for proposal. In that request for proposal, 7 companies responded, 4 of which were deemed qualified to meet our actual needs. At that point, we finalized our proposals. We offered each one of those vendors the opportunity to present a demonstration for us based on a set criteria. We conducted multiple working sessions to identify the scope and the timeline of the project. And we eventually got the 4 vendors on site providing their demonstrations. Each one of the companies that qualified did actually reply and did present a demo. We had follow-up meetings and multiple demos. We went through a pretty significant scoring process and then ultimately vendor selection. And to give you an idea what the scoring process looked like, the 5 big categories, and there were sub-metrics underneath these, but the 5 big categories that we were looking at when choosing a vendor, a potential vendor, was fit of required functional capabilities, fit of technological needs and integrations, someone whose cost and structure for the proposed solution meets our actual budget, partnering and implementing, their partnering and implementing approach, how they go about working with other companies, and how they reviews that we get from their experience and references in their current clients. So the 4 companies that we ultimately had vendor demos from: Insight, NICE, IK Systems, and Coban. These were the scoring. Actually, in this case, just like golf, the lower the score, the better. Insight System was by far and away our clear winner as meeting our needs went. And just to give you a little background on Insight Public Sector, their solution was a strategic partnership with both Panasonic and Genetec. Panasonic would be the provider of the body-worn cameras, the hardware, and Genetec would be the provider of the digital evidence management system. This still gives us a single point of contact. Like I said, this group most closely met our technical needs. The DEMS solution has a number of scalable integrations potential, which allows us to grow over time rather than being technologically locked in upon purchase. There's an open platform, and then the solution as a service pricing option gives us a ton of flexibility. And this is really a key distinction in moving away from the actual physical ownership of the property. Insight itself is established, responsive, and innovative. They have a long working relationship with Panasonic. They have over 30 employees dedicated just to the public sector support. And then they are in a number of different police departments across the United States. And they have over 10,000 solutions that are currently modernizing public safety workflows, which is something that we desperately need.
So Nick, just a quick
Yeah.
question here. And it may be coming anyway in future slides, but what efficiencies would we gain from this partnership or from this vendor in terms of releasing information to the public, right? So a critical incident happens. Are there efficiencies gained in that process of either redacting or releasing video?
Yeah, there's significant. Sorry, Beam, were you jumping in?
No, go ahead. I'll add it as needed.
There are significant efficiency gains with this new system. First and foremost, there's actually redaction software inside of the system, which will allow us to keep the video in the system the entire time. There are major security improvements. There's the ability for us to create essentially virtual rooms where we can send links out. We won't have to, in this solution, we won't have to ever take the video out of the system. There is an accounting log or an audit log for every single click inside a video, who can see it. There are watermarking features that we can put on the videos so we can establish who potentially is viewing them, and we can create a number of different public interfaces. So let's say we have a critical incident. We can create a room that has potentially unredacted video for city council. And then if it's determined by legal that certain things have to be redacted, we could create another link to send publicly where people can basically log into the system. They're only contained to the video or the link that we sent them. So the video that's there, they can't search around, but everybody that logs in, we know the date and the time and the audit for people that are viewing it. The public side's a little different than the employee side. So those will get vetted out in the policies and procedures. But yeah, there's a lot of workflow efficiencies related to the DEMS system. Mia, did you want to add anything?
I'll add that not only can other digital evidence can be added to the system, we can actually send out a link to, let's say, a convenience store or a private citizen where they have footage pertaining to an incident. They can actually upload from their house or from their site to our system and put it in, like Nick said, into that room that we have dedicated to receive digital evidence pertaining to any sort of incident. And the redaction software is actually a toned down version, and it's capable of doing redactions with wholly contained within the system in the whole Genetec ecosystem. So we don't ever have to take it out of the system to do the redaction for public consumption.
Yeah, the big takeaway from the DEMS side of the house is that it's a true case management system rather than just kind of a file storage system. Our current C3 Sentinel system is primarily a way to log and file individual body-worn cameras. The new DEMS system will give us the ability to manage the video and all the digital evidence as an individual case, which makes routing and makes viewing a lot easier from a systems administration standpoint.
Thank you.
So I threw this slide in here because I think people are actually curious at what this would look like. This is the actual Panasonic new body-worn camera. It actually goes by iPro 4000 is the name. And it's got a detachable base. That's why you can see the picture to the right. The bottom is popped off. It's got a detachable battery at the bottom. It's got 12-hour field battery life. You can see all the specs. I'm not going to read them all, but some of the major ones, it does record in 1080, 720 and 360 resolution, both in wide and standard aspect ratios. It's got 4 microphones that you can see in the corners of each one of the body-worn camera photos for noise reduction. And then it's got built-in GPS, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth, which is key for some of the other features that we potentially could get into moving forward.
Another question here.
Yeah.
I know durability long-term is one of the challenges with some of these. How durable are these in terms of, you know, I mean, obviously things break, right? But if there was a critical incident, a camera falls, I know there's been issues in the past where cameras break like that. So is there anything that we know about that?
Yeah, all like industry standard has come up so far in the last 5 years where that cameras go through like a 6-foot drop test, a 10-foot drop test, and get thrown against a wall and rolled into underneath a tire or a truck tire and rolled over it. So it is capable. We're not saying that this camera will never break. It's hardware. It will break at some point, but the positive side of it, the SD card that contains the video evidence is contained within the camera and cannot be removed. So from a evidence management side within the camera, no one can manipulate the evidence before it gets uploaded to our system.
Yeah, like me and said, the industry standards have increased in the 6 years since we've had this program. These meet all industry standards. Obviously, it's durability is something that we want to test during the piloting phase. So I think we would have a better handle on it when we actually physically get the cameras in our possession.
And plus, we've had, like Nick said, we had the past 5-6 years of real world experience, that institutional knowledge that we've gained in, with our current camera, that we know how to test and what to test and where and what environments to test, whether day or night.
Great, thank you.
This doesn't play as well from a visual standpoint, but this is basically some screenshots of what clearance looks like. This is the Genetech product that would be the application we'll use for a digital evidence management system. It's got obviously direct integration with the new body-worn camera from Panasonic. All of our 500-ish, 490 terabytes of data will be migrated into the new system. So we will not be running an old system in a new system. Part of the implementation costs and the discussion that we'll have later around pricing is based on us moving all of our data into the new system. That way we have a single source for all of this. We don't have to maintain 2 systems. I mentioned before the software or solution as a service. This will be deployed on the cloud, so we will not be doing on-premises storage. It'll be on Microsoft's Azure Government Cloud, which is New York State CJIS, Criminal Justice Information Security compliant. It's the highest standard that you can get for cloud-based data management. It has open platforms and gives us the ability through APIs, essentially, to link to our existing legacy data. So potentially moving down the line, we could have an integration between our body-worn camera system, our records management system, potentially the county's 911 system, so that case management becomes really easy across the systems. And that's not something that we have right now. And obviously, I mentioned before, the security and auditing functionality is a key component with the new feature, or sorry, with the new system. Okay, so program benefits, we kind of hit this, I won't beat it to death, but the new body-worn cameras, increased video quality, will have better tagging and user interface for the officers on the road, which they'll like. Obviously, we'll be in a new replacement agreement cycle because we're going with a software as a solution, solution as a service, too many S's, solution as a service for our pricing. We don't actually own the hardware. We get upgrades every single time Panasonic changes the body-worn camera. So if they go from the 4,000 to say the 5,000, we get all new body-worn cameras. If it breaks, we send it back and we get a brand new one. We don't own it. We don't have to fix it. It just goes in the mail and we send it back. And we still maintain, like Mean said, a closed camera architecture, right? So there's no way that people can tamper with any of the videos prior to uploads. From a digital evidence management standpoint, the shift to cloud-based storage will help us process the digital information a lot easier. The new system will allow us to incorporate all of our digital evidence. So the blue light cameras that are around our surveillance camera systems inside the interview rooms here and around the physical buildings. And like Meehan mentioned, to potentially privately owned businesses.
And also, Nick, on the camera too, not just the camera, but also the battery will be also upgradable as well, because like a previous slide, a lot of our a lot of our current issues with the camera today is the battery has been charging for the last 5 years. So 5 years of worth of charging, it doesn't hold the same amount of charge over time for being charged. So
right.
Can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
yes.
Is there any difference or distinction with this new technology in terms of what the camera actually sees? Is it the same kind of vantage point, or are there some peripherals as well?
Yeah, the angle of view is 165 degrees. So imagine you're looking at it this way, similar to the human eye. Nothing could compete with the human eye, but the camera hardware has a 65 or 68 degree angle of view.
How does that compare to what we have right now? Is it the same? Is it the same?
Same. Yeah. Sorry, it is the same. Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is everybody's favorite slide. This is the estimated pricing structure based on what we have discussed previously as part of this project. We are going as a SaaS solution, right? So the pricing we did break down by line item, so people would have the ability to understand kind of what it looks like from a rough ballpark around each one of the cost per item. But ultimately, this is kind of a package deal. So everything goes in together. The digital evidence management system itself, the big chunk is in implementation and year one costs, obviously. For the sake of brevity on the slide, I combined years 2 through 5, but those are essentially broken out evenly across those 4 years. So you can see the total cost for the DEMS system would be $2,445,000 over the course of 5 years, with the big outlay obviously being in implementation in year 1. The docking stations, we would need 66 docking stations to handle the over 500 cameras that we have. They're at a cost per item of about $2,000 each. That's a one-time cost. The legacy data migration is part of the implementation costs, would be about $300,000, $294,000. And then maintaining those 490 terabytes from a storage standpoint in the GovCloud would run about $142,000 over the course of the 5 years, in addition to the implementation costs. The uniform mounts, where the body-worn camera attaches to the actual uniform, we would need roughly 520 of those at $140 per. That would run about $73,000, again, a one-time cost. Vehicle installation, the kits that go in the car that allow the programming inside of the vehicle for the body-worn camera. We have roughly about 300 vehicles. That kit costs about $299 per item, so that would be about $90,000 at initial implementation. And then the last two, vehicle triggers and personal triggers. These are options that we have, we originally had not put into our program, but with our vendor that we chose for the program, they offer these. So we're going to pilot them. Essentially what they are from a vehicle standpoint, you can have a trigger put into the car that Whenever you release the shotgun from the shotgun holder, that the body worn camera automatically turns on. You could also potentially have a trigger in a vehicle whenever you open the door, the body worn camera turns itself on. And there's actually a box, a mounting unit inside of the car that automates all of that processing. The personal triggers are actually holster triggers. So potentially we could have a trigger inside of the holster for the tasers and for the handguns that officers carry, that when they pull that equipment out, that the body worn camera automatically goes on. The personal triggers is 780 because not every person carries a taser. So that's our rough estimate around how many we would need if that was an option that we or the city wanted to go with. You can see the pricing structure there. It's roughly $250,000 per. The vehicle box can maintain up to 4 different triggers, so you don't have to pay double. So if you wanted to do the vehicle triggers in the shotgun and you wanted to do the vehicle triggers on the door, you don't get banged twice for the cost of the car kit. So all in all, the entire project, if everything was in, including the vehicle triggers, would be roughly $3.6 million over the course of 5 years. The biggest outlay is the implementation costs and year 1 cost, which would be roughly $1.8 million. Any questions on this one right now? I know it's a lot of information and kind of fast.
Yeah, Nick, I guess the question would be, is there, and this may be a larger question for the administration, but is there a plan on when the request is going to come to council to approve these dollars?
Yeah, so I'll get that in part of my next slide. And I should have mentioned this earlier. We have been in discussions with budget and the chief's office, or sorry, the mayor's office. We have set aside some asset forfeiture funds for this, and we have cash capital that's going to go towards the implementation in year 1 costs. I think we have close to $900,000 already set aside for this project, which was actually from the previous administration. To your point, Councilman Gruber, this is kind of our tentative next steps. We wanted to get in front of you guys to give you an idea of what this looks like, what we've been working on, and where we're potentially headed. Even though we don't really expect to be in front of council until probably June at this point. We are beginning, sorry, somebody say something? Nope, okay. We are beginning to pilot the DEMS software and the hardware, the body worn camera hardware at the end of March. It says 3/1 on there. That's because we've actually started the planning process. We've had multiple meetings around what that looks like. We have an entire evaluation schema built, and we have the identified officers who will be piloting this, and we have all of the users that will be using clearance from the digital evidence management side. We'll run that pilot for about 2 months. There's no cost to us at that point. I put council approval in here. I put 3/16 because that's today, through 6/15 because that's roughly the time we would expect to go in front of council for the appropriation of funds. I would imagine we're probably going to have more discussions between now and then, so I left that as kind of open-ended. We're expecting, if everything goes well and we get approval for funding, the policy and procedure review will take 3 to 4 months, probably starting early June, hopefully culminating around the end of August. Because this is a new hardware, this potentially changes some of our direction around how we turn the camera on, how we tag the video, how we classify it. So we'll need a policy and procedure review. It's also the time to potentially update policies with new capabilities in the DEMS system or any potential changes. Like we did with the last project, we want to have some community town halls to show citizens what we're purchasing, how the program is going to work, and give them a breakdown of what to expect from a body worn camera standpoint, and then improvements in the digital evidence management. At the same time, we'll be doing end user training for the officers and for the administrators using the DEMS system. And then if everything goes according to plan and perfect, we would start implementation. You would actually see these roll out onto the street in the middle of September through December. So that's from a time frame standpoint, that's what we're looking at. So I think this is the last slide, but just to kind of hammer home some of the key takeaways, this will allow us to completely modernize our program, right? I know it's 6 years, doesn't sound like a long time, but that is eons in technology years. The solution as a service provides us the flexibility to both scale the project moving forward and meet our current needs. It'll allow us to integrate with all of our existing systems, not all of them, most of our existing systems, and will vastly improve our data workflow. The enhanced security functionality will allow us to protect our data more efficiently. Right now, the way that the system limitations that we have with C3 Sentinel, there is constant removal of the video and sending it around, whether that's the city council or out to the public or to City Hall. At that point, once the digital evidence leaves the system, we have no control over what happens to any of that video. Obviously, the original still lives inside the system, but we don't want to have copies of things floating around in a bunch of different places. Plus, there are storage cost issues with that. If the same version of the video is being stored on city networks in 6 or 7 different places. And then, as I mentioned before, we'll have a pretty significant improved capacity for sharing and managing all of this digital data, both internally in city government and externally for the public, which will increase transparency and accountability.
Well, Nick, another question here.
Yeah.
So I know I had this conversation with the chief at some point, but one of the things that I want to get a better understanding of is how will council members have access to this? And then generally speaking, my understanding was that we might have a folder or something on our computer that required us to have a consent or an agreement or something that we sign before we view the camera footage. Could you talk through that? I know it's probably still being developed, but just generally speaking, what that might look like for us in the future.
Yeah, so there's actually 2 different questions there. The discussion around the folder on your computer and the signature, that's for the current system. Because we have no way right now to allow you access to the system and view the footage inside of the system, we have to take it out, put it in the folder on the department share, and then for our accounting and our auditing, we will have to have a signature for viewing. But I mean, realistically, from a technical standpoint, that's not really secure. Moving forward, the way it will work is we will be able to, when a critical incident happens, based on the council policy that we have, we will be able to send a link to all the council members for them to view it. They'll click the link, it will bring them into our system. Once it does that, it will know who's accessing it. And then you can view the video right inside the system. So it never comes out.
Good, I understood. Okay.
And that same process for our partners at the DA's office or some of the other stuff for discovery.
And the other critical thing, Nick, if you don't mind me jumping, is the role-based access control. And so, you know, we have the wherewithal with this system to be able to say, based on who you are and what you do, either with the city council, with RPD, or as an external user, what you are able to see and what you are able to do with what you see. And so I think that's really important to. So it's a really, really secure system. And one of the parts that was really impressive to me is we also have the wherewithal to even put a watermark, depending on what your role-based access is, to watermark the video. So you can even mitigate the possibility that someone's gonna, you know, record it with their cell phone while they're watching it on the screen, because if they try to do that it's going to have their name and identifying information in the watermark. And I think all of those things really kind of help to tie this down security wise and not have things going where they shouldn't go and being used for inappropriate means.
Sure. One of the other pieces to that is, when it's released to the public and time to release to the public, oftentimes we as council members get feedback from the community that, something is being held or, being tampered with, or it's taking too long, or whatever the case may be, we get that feedback. So can you maybe speak to what you think the general timeline might be on having the opportunity to, be realistic, but redact video and then release to the public under this new system?
Yeah, I think it will. I think it will increase the availability for public files. One of the main drawbacks to what we currently have right now is up until about 2 weeks ago, we only had one person that was redacting videos. We have since hired a second digital media technician. She is training right now and she's getting up to speed. We have consolidated a number of our other departments into the Office of Business Intelligence, including FOIL. So I know you're talking about public release of video, but FOIL plays a large piece in how we have to process digital evidence. We get a lot of FOILs for video and body-worn cameras, whether it be from lawyers or researchers or just the general public. So we have a queue for FOILs that we have to get through. Having a second person in there will help. With this new digital evidence management, we are putting in our budget. I don't know if this is, we're trying to mitigate some of the personnel workflow related issues that we have in our upcoming budget too. So I think it's something that's going to be improving in the future.
Okay. Councilmember Gruber, any additional questions that you have?
Yeah, just one. Any other cities that have rolled out with this company, this technology?
Yeah, there are.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, there are. Actually, we spoke with Connecticut state troopers. They have it, Kansas City, Missouri, and also Monroe. Yeah,
Florida.
Monroe County, Florida, which is like mile zero area, Key West area, all the way down to the
I'm
Keys.
willing to go and look at some of what they're doing down there, Councilman Gruber. Be happy to go down to Monroe County, Florida.
Yep.
But so
Yeah.
Kansas City, the municipality has
Yes.
adopted this same technology.
They have just the camera. They just have a different Panasonic model camera. They have an older model. The model, I can't remember the exact model at this moment, but they have the Genetec system and the way they do evidence management. Yes.
Great, thank you. I think that'll be helpful if there are, when this eventually comes forward. I think there'll be a lot of more granular questions, as there should be, and I think it'd be useful to be able to talk to another department that's using it.
Yes, and we've done the due diligence of talking to them as we started this journey to, prior to the demos and reaching out to vendors, or not vendors, but the RFP process. So to gather more information for our own knowledge in what direction we should adopt a newer system for 2022.
Great, thank you.
So before we wrap, I know our chief of staff also has some additional questions. So I'm going to ask him to chime in here.
Sure, thank you. And particularly because I know some council members had conflicts. So I just wanted to, a couple questions if I could, Nick. One of the first things that you talked about was that the old system, the initial, kind of the initial objective was to get officer buy-in. And I recall that we had pretty high compliance. I know you guys do like spot checks and things. Is that still the case? I mean, and so if we put a new system in, will there be big buy-in among the rank and file that they're going to be behind this and excited about it, or will they be resistant?
I saw the
We
chief
had-
just flipped off, so
Yeah.
I was gonna let you know.
Well, I can tell you, even Mike Mazzio behind closed doors will admit that the current camera system has done us much more good than harm. Although he's never going to say that in a labor meeting, but yeah, we have the buy-in. Really, the only time we have incidents now where we don't have the body worn camera is, genuine, user error. We don't have, people trying to find ways out of turning the camera on.
Well,
Just to-
I noticed, go
Oh,
ahead,
sorry.
sorry. Nick.
I'll say, just to chime in on that too, the new system will allow us to do a lot more robust audit checking. There's a lot more analytical features inside this system that don't currently exist. So you mentioned before how we had done, in the first year, we did pretty significant compliance checks. They were all done manually. It was a really labor intensive process. This would allow us to kind of build those checks and balances in place systematically.
So it's a little more dynamic, which is probably better, I'm sure. But and I also, from the presentation, you've got some more options for sort of automatic triggering too. So the cameras automatically turn on. And one of the ones you talked about was in the vehicle and some other vehicle hardware that be mounted. But you didn't mention dash cams. Is that something that's an add-on? It would be easy to do. Is that something you're considering?
We are not considering dash cams as part of this project. I know it's come up multiple times before. I believe it was a funding issue previously. It is, the digital evidence management system can handle all types of digital evidence. So theoretically, dash cams could be potentially included in this. I don't know, it wasn't part of our original ask in the request for proposals. So I don't know necessarily that Insight has that capability right now. Mandy,
Based on the
Yeah.
based on the size of
Yeah.
Insight and kind of their profile, I would guess the answer is yes, and a pretty high percentage of probability.
So yeah,
We can look into it.
to add on, yeah, so to add on to that, Insight does have a dash cam solution as well. Like Nick said, we did not pursue in that manner because we were focused on our, the hardware and the software, the DEMS and the BWC part. So with that trigger box mentioned earlier that goes into the car and be able to connect with 4 different modules, the dash cam could be one of those modules that could be integrated if deemed necessary, and funded, of course.
And so that's another question I had, and this kind of goes to a bit of what Councilman Gruber was asking about sort of the testimonials or sort of the other departments. My experience in the past was, like, for instance, hardware, like radio hardware. Motorola was the gold standard, right? If you were going to buy radios for law enforcement or public safety, they would be Motorola, and everyone kind of expected that. So this Genentech and Panasonic partnership, it doesn't sound like it's you didn't mention dozens of agencies, and I'm just wondering, is there something out there that's similar to Motorola that we just decided not to consider, kind of similar to the example I used, or is this still so new that that kind of a thing doesn't exist? I'm curious.
I think it's more around the pairing of these two, the specific
Right.
camera and the DEMS system. There are hundreds of agencies that utilize the clearance digital evidence management system. There are hundreds of other agencies that utilize the body worn camera system from Panasonic. We were answering that question previously on this solution where they're both. So yeah, I mean, we can look into both of those.
But I think that answer is more complete, the one you just gave, because the DEMS, component being used by dozens or hundreds of agencies, like you said, and then the Panasonic. I mean, that's I think pretty significant. It would be good to see, like, who those agencies are and kind of how that number, I think, would make sense. And then the last thing, you hit on it as well, but redaction. I know Matt Ellers was kind of a one-man band. It sounds like you've doubled that. Do you anticipate with this system that is going to be sufficient, or that there will be budget requests in the future to kind of expand that? I mean, where do you think that's going to sit?
Yeah, there's, I don't want to speak out of turn, but we will definitely be making a budget request to if the DEMS project goes through, in order to support this new system with additional resources, including redaction related activities.
Yeah, and we put that on the table at the very beginning of starting this project because we want to make sure that, you're only going to have a successful project if you have the people in place to support it and move it forward, at implementation. And we really want to make sure that we are there because this is too important to not do right.
And my guess is the easier and better that the product is, and the easier it is to get, and the easier it is for people to be able to access it, the more people are going to want it. It's kind of like the crime labs and DNA testing and all that. All of a sudden, it was easier and faster and better, but they fell behind because so many people wanted it. And I just wonder, what that might look like from defense lawyers, all manner of folks trying to get access to it.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of wrestling with that problem right now.
Right now. Yep.
Right, as the program is kind of developed over the course of 6 years, we are finding ourselves in a situation where the demand is increased way beyond the capability of the personnel that we currently have and the software the software that we have. So I think this will help us get close, but to your point, I'm sure the goalposts will keep getting moved and we'll have to keep making sure we're watering this.
Well, and it might be interesting for council. I know like 911's been impacted and others have been impacted by changes to discovery rules in the state. And it might be good to know what that looks like related to body worn cameras and understanding those policies, because obviously, the ability for people to robustly defend themselves in court is pretty fundamental. And I just I would imagine members of council will be interested in knowing how this fits in with that and what those rules are and how they apply to the Rochester Police Department.
Yeah, that will definitely has an impact.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for your time today for the presentation. I'm certain council members will be reviewing this, and if there's additional questions, we'll be following up, but look forward to continuing the discussion. Thanks, everyone.